Hello, Namaskar and Adab to all my friends from your friend, astrologer and guide Irfan, once more with you from your very own channel, Astro Assurance. In many areas of our life that we look for answers, one of the key areas that almost all of us probably look for answers is the area of wealth or money. How much money can we make or we will make, or a horoscope shows a probability of. And hence many times in almost all my consultation, most of them, people do ask me this question in varying ways. For example, somebody will ask me, will I be financially secure in my old age, or will I get all the comforts of life, or will I get enough money, or will I earn enough money to have all the comforts of life, whatever I want. But somebody is very outright, they ask me, will I be a billionaire? So then you have to answer that question from certain placements. Now I have done some related videos around this earlier also, because lately I have got a few questions around, can you be more specific about which areas to look for, which houses to look for. Now I'll try to get as specific as possible with the example of charts, horoscopes also in this particular video, but just to keep it, start at the 70,000 feet level and then go down. Two most important horoscopes for money, for wealth and good money and good wealth are the second house and the 11th house. These are very important. Why? The second house is the earning of the lagna, earning of the self, and the 11th house is the house 11th to the lagna and also the house of gains, the biggest house of gains. And the 11th house is the second to your 10th house, the 10th house of your karma, your work, your career. So these become very important. The second house to the lagna becomes very important, and the 11th house, which is second house to the 10th house, becomes very important, because both of these are getting connected to your earnings through either your efforts or through your work. So if the second and 11th houses are very important, most important, great wealth generally comes to those people where they have connection between the second and the 11th house, because then they act together. It's a multiplying effect for great money or big money. Now it doesn't mean that in every horoscope where there is a strong second house and 11th house connect, everybody will make money, but there are certain conditions. The fine print is there. The condition is, if the second house and the 11th house are strong, and firstly they have to be strong by themselves, which means no malefics place in them, at least unfriendly malefics place in them. They are not connected to any doshas, especially the Daridra yoga or the Kendram yoga or dosha. These are tough ones, or the Shrapit dosha. These are tough ones. Not necessarily all of them will take away the strength from the horoscope in money making, but to a large extent they affect your money making capacity. So firstly, there should not be any malefics associated or placed in these two houses. There should be no bad doshas which are associated with these, and thirdly, these planets should not get into a challenge like a combustion or a debilitation or even an eclipse. Though there are differences also, there are variations also in this, but general rule is that this should not happen. Second, if they have a connect, they should be either placed together or they should be placed in some sign where they show a connect between them, and where the money is coming from has to be connected to any of the placements of the second or the 11th house pointing towards that area or being placed there. So if you want to, for example, become a person who has to become an investor into speculative investments, make money in property, in shares, like a Warren Buffett or a Donald Trump, then you have to look at the 5th house, very important. However, if you have to be a movie star, then you also have to look at the specifically for movie stars, the 8th house becomes very important. The 8th house is the house of make believe, magic, secret. So many times what the star is in their own life, in their personal lives, we don't know. What we see is the screen persona and we get affected by that, and hence that is important. And thirdly, if you are getting connected to technology, then Rahu becomes a very important placement. If you are getting connected to arts, then obviously the 5th house is very important. Sun becomes very important if it's connected to arts, and if it's connected to arts connected with creativity, then Venus and Moon also become very important. So these are the general rules, generic rules of where you can make your money from. So let's jump into 5-6 horoscopes. I'll just breeze through it. aiming only at the money making perspective. We have talked a little bit about these horoscopes in different contexts earlier, but today strictly I'm going to keep it at the money level and explain how these horoscopes show a promise of big wealth and which area the wealth is coming from. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Let's start with some Indian actors. Let's start with Amir Khan, 3 Indian superstars of Bollywood. So if you see, the second house of Amir Khan is the sign of Pisces ruled by Jupiter, and this 11th house is also the sign of Jupiter, which is the Sagittarius sign. So yeah, this is the strong connection which the zodiac is giving by keeping one placement or one planet which rules both the second house and the 11th house. So where does Jupiter go now? Jupiter goes into the third house of effort, but in the sign of Mars. And because he's an actor, as I said earlier, 8th house becomes very, very important. So his source of wealth becomes the 8th house. Now the 8th house lord Mercury gets placed in the second house in the sign of Jupiter, and so the 8th house, the second house and the 11th house strongly get connected. And because he's an actor, so the 5th house of arts also gets connected, because Mercury is both the lord of the 5th house and the 8th house and placed in the second house. Now Mercury shows debilitated here. However, Mercury is not exactly at the degree of debilitation, and secondly, Mercury, when it shows it gets into a debilitation sign, it actually increases the creativity part of the person, and so his second house and 11th house are strong by virtue of being ruled by the same planet, which is Jupiter. Jupiter is placed in a good sign which is friendly to it, and the lord of the 5th house of arts, acting, media, and the 8th house of the the 8th house of the make-believe world, magical world, the world of cinema, that planet gets placed in the second house. And so Amir Khan makes a huge wealth because of this connection between the second house, the 11th house, the 5th house, 8th house, and the lord of the 8th house getting placed in the second house. Let's get to another horoscope, which is the horoscope of Salman Khan, who is another Bollywood actor. Now here too, if you see, the second house and the 11th house lords both are placed strong. The 11th house lord Saturn is placed in its own sign. The second house lord Venus is placed with Mars, which is the Lagna lord, and placed in its exaltation sign in the 10th house. So the second house lord Venus also goes into a strong, powerful placement with the Lagna lord itself. Now what is the 8th house connect here? The 8th house connect here is that the 8th house lord, which is Mars, which rules the house of make-believe and cinema, gets placed in exaltation sign in the 10th house, and with the planet which rules the second house, which is Venus. And the other connection is both of them are placed in the other sign of Saturn, which rules the 11th house, and they get placed in the 10th house, which is also ruled by Saturn in the Capricorn sign. And hence he made huge money and he has got huge success in his acting career. This is the horoscope of Shah Rukh Khan. In Shah Rukh Khan's horoscope, if you see that the second house lord and the 11th house lord again are the same, which is Mercury, and Mercury goes into the sign of Scorpio along with the Scorpio ruler Mars, which is also the original ruler or the natural ruler of the 8th house. And what is the 8th house direct connect here? It is that the 8th house lord Jupiter, which also rules the 5th house of arts, media, entertainment, Jupiter goes and gets placed in the 11th house. And the planet which is placed with the second lord Mercury, which is Mars, which also rules Scorpio, aspects Jupiter in the 11th house, and hence Shah Rukh Khan also made a lot of money through media, arts, entertainment, and the make-believe or the magical world of cinema, which is the 8th house. Jupiter going into the 11th house, and Jupiter and the aspect of Mars, which is placed in its own sign and the natural ruler of the 8th house, and placed with the second lord Mercury. Okay, let's move on to a different stream altogether, moving away from acting. Let's look at the horoscope of Donald Trump. Now in Donald Trump's horoscope, the second house lord and the 11th house lord again is the same, which is Mercury, and Mercury goes into its own sign in the 11th house. So strong connect between the second lord and the 11th house lord. However, where did Donald Trump make his most money from? He made from real estate. Real estate is the 4th house. What is the 4th house lord? Mars. Where is Mars placed? In the Lagna itself. And what is the Karaka of properties? The Karaka of properties is Venus. And Venus is placed in the sign of Moon, and Moon is placed in the sign of Scorpio, ruled by Mars. And the other connecteds, Mars aspects the 4th house with its 4th aspect. And where did he make his most money from? He made in speculating in properties, and hence the 5th house of speculation comes into the picture here. So Donald Trump put a lot of money, invested a lot of money in property, into real estate, and made a lot of money from it, because the 5th house lord Jupiter goes into the 2nd house in the sign of Virgo, and both it aspects the 10th house of career as well as is under the aspect of Rahu from the sign of Venus. So once again, the 5th house of speculative gains, investment into real estate, property, Jupiter getting placed in the 2nd house, the 2nd house lord and the 11th house lord placed in its own sign. So there is a connect between the 5th house and the 2nd and the 11th house lord, and the connect to real estate through the 5th house lord placed in the 2nd house, and secondly the 4th house lord Mars goes into the Lagna. Mars also aspects Moon in the 4th house, which is also the Karaka of the 4th house, and the Karaka of property, which is Venus, placed in the sign of Moon in the 12th house, with the original ruler of the 11th house, which is Saturn. So again, Donald Trump made a lot of money through his speculative investments in property, in real estate. Now let's change the industry to another industry, which is technology, and let's look at Mark Zuckerberg's horoscope. Now Mark Zuckerberg's 2nd house is ruled by Saturn, and his 11th house is ruled by Mars. And if you see, both Saturn and Mars are placed together in the 10th house of career and with Moon. Saturn is exalted here, so the 2nd lord of earning gets exalted in the 10th house of career with the 11th lord Mars. And what is the strongest denoter of technology? The strongest denoter of a technology is Rahu. Rahu gets placed in the 5th house, and it is under the 8th aspect of Mars. And Venus, which is the significator of computers, gets placed in the 4th house under the aspect of both Mars and Saturn, and aspects them back. So there is a sign exchange between Venus and Mars. 2nd lord Saturn gets into exaltation sign in the 10th house, placed along with the 11th house lord Mars. And Rahu, which is the strongest denoter of technology, is under the aspect of Mars. So if you see Mark Zuckerberg's horoscope, almost all his placements are fantastic, with even Sun going into the exaltation sign of Aries in the 4th house. Now let's get into another industry, which is technology, but this is slightly different area of technology, which is vehicles and cars and space. This is the horoscope of Elon Musk. Now if you see the Elon Musk's horoscope, Elon Musk's 2nd house is ruled by Mars, and Mars goes into the 11th house itself, which is ruled by Saturn. And so there is a very strong connect between the 2nd lord and the 11th lord by Mars getting placed in the 11th house itself and in the sign of the 11th house itself, and in exaltation and with Rahu. Now being placed with Rahu, he will also go through, or he has gone through, many ups and downs. A couple of years back he was thought to be almost bankrupt. Today he is counted amongst the richest people in the world, and this up and down and this ups and downs in his career he will face throughout his life. He has faced throughout his life so far and will continue to face. Secondly, where did he make most of his money from? In Tesla, which is cars, and hence Venus, which is the Karaka of cars, is placed with the 11th lord, which is Saturn. So the 2nd lord Mars getting strongly connected to the 11th lord Saturn by place in its sign, and in which area? In the area of vehicles or cars, Saturn placed in the 3rd house with Saturn. Now let's look at the horoscope of Jeff Bezos or Jeffrey Bezos, the owner or the proprietor or the head of Amazon. Here if you see, the second lord is Mars. Again Mars has gone into the 11th house, but now it's placed with Saturn itself in exaltation. So very powerful position of making lots of money over a period of time. But where did Jeff Bezos make his money from? He made most of his money from an online bookstore. What is books? Books is about publishing. So the 9th house of publishing and education and books, Lord Mars getting into the 11th house in exaltation sign while also ruling the second house. Extremely strong position. Secondly, what is the other karaka or significator of learning or knowledge of books, which is Jupiter. Jupiter going into its own sign in the Lagna itself while ruling the 10th house of career as well. And the other house of education, which is the 5th house, ruled by moon, and moon goes into the 10th house ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter and moon are in center to each other or in kendra to each other, and very strong Gajkesari yoga. And so Jeff Bezos made his money from books publishing. Secondly, he has also continued to make wealth in an online store, which to a large extent is also related to household items. Household items are also seen from the second house of family and shops. And so Mars being also the ruler of the second house and being placed in exaltation in Saturn, so he's continued to make his money from an online store which is also related to household items to a large extent, apart from the bookstore he has. Now let's look at the horoscope of Bill Gates. Now in Bill Gates' horoscope, the second house is ruled by moon and the 11th house is ruled by Mars. And if you see, Mars is placed in the 4th house while moon is placed in the 10th house of career, and both aspect each other. And because he made his money from technology, and hence Rahu, the Karak of technology, aspects moon in the 10th house as well as aspects the second house of earning, and hence Rahu both aspects moon, which is the second lord, as well as aspects the second sign also, which is Cancer sign in the second house. And so through technology, Bill Gates makes his money, makes his strong reputation as well. The other Karaka of computers is Venus. Venus here is placed in a very strong placement in its own sign and with Saturn in exaltation. And Saturn is also the Nakshatra lord in Bill Gates' horoscope, and hence Bill Gates makes his huge money from technology, where Rahu adds to the wealth, Venus also adds to the wealth, and the second lord and the 11th lord, where the second lord and the 11th lord in mutual aspect to each other in a very strong placement. Let's change the industry to stocks, share market, and who's the hero and our idol where it comes to share market or making money from shares, the stock market? It is Warren Buffett. Now in Warren Buffett's horoscope, if you see, the second house lord is Jupiter and the 11th house lord is Mercury. Now Mercury is placed in its own sign in an exaltation, and Jupiter rules not only the second house of earning but also the 5th house of speculation. Especially 5th house is strongly related to speculative investments and also to the stock market, and hence the second lord as well as the 5th lord Jupiter placed in the sign of Gemini in the 8th house. What is 8th house? Other people's money, virtual money. So we know that on the virtual market, on the stock market and online market, Warren Buffett has made his billions of dollars, and also aspects its own house, the second house, as well as aspects the sign of Libra, which is the 12th lord, and Venus is placed with Mercury in a niche bhang in the 11th house. So Warren Buffett has not made so much money through technology, but he has made much more money in stocks and the share market. So friends, now we have discussed different horoscopes from different industries, from technology, from cars to stock market to actors. So when we look at the horoscopes of all of these people, there is a very strong connect between the second house and the 11th house and the karakas of the specific area or industry where they made money from. However, there are very less or hardly any afflictions in their horoscope. Most of the time Saturn is placed very strong. Saturn is either getting into exaltation. Each of their horoscopes, almost all horoscopes have one or two exalted planets. If they have a debilitated planet, then there is a Nijbhang, and there are stronger connects between the second house lord, the 11th house lord, and the karaka of the area where they have made their money from. So if you need to make money and you want to make a lot of money, or if you want to see where the source of money can come in your horoscope from, in your life from, see how there is a connect between the second house lord and the 11th house, where they are getting connected. Are they placed with certain planets? Those planets rule which houses. Are they strongly related to the karakas of a certain area of life, to certain industry, and then see whether you have potential or interest or education or qualification to be able to move towards that area. If you're already in that area, then it's just a matter of time before you hit the big bucks. Now we really don't know whether there are any strong afflictions, but one thing is very important, that all the third house lords are very strongly placed. The house of effort, the house of self-enterprise, and the biggest gain for somebody who makes the biggest gains in life through anything is the third house. I've also made a video on the third house, the key to destiny. Please watch this. So friends, look into your own horoscopes, understand your placements better to see if there is big money in your life or not, and act accordingly, move towards that area, and may you enjoy your big bucks. So friends, like this video, share this video, and if you're looking for a personal consultation from me, please reach out to me at the links given below. Until some other time with some other video, this is a friend, astrologer and guide, Irfan, signing off.